I do think I was particularly hated, and I can't really figure out why. I do not wish to see Europe become minority white.
Why does it matter?
The British people have a right to maintain their British identity. It seems to me that the only people denied that right are Europeans, are white people.
This obsession with race. So I don't want to then on the other side also fixate on race.
Misogyny, homophobia, anti-Semitism, you're out. I'm not tolerating any of the three.
What if they're anti-black?
If they hate black people, then no. But if they want to have a sensible discussion about racial difficulties.
Why did Jews like me get a free pass in that sense? Like anti-Semitism out?
I don't think I really have an answer to that.
Then what are we saying?
I have no idea, but we ought to talk about it and maybe find out.
That's why I would say this is culture.
We don't talk about it at all.
It's culture.
Why don't we talk about why? And how it is just common sense. If you are going to bring millions of people who believe in Sharia law into your country, you are bringing Sharia law into your country. You don't get to do that here. You want to come here and cut up your daughter's genitals, get the hell out. Halal is another example. Forced marriage, child marriage, Sharia courts, out, out, out.
61% of regular Heretics viewers haven't subscribed yet. Can I ask you a favour? If you love these fearless conversations, hit subscribe now because it's free, takes 2 seconds and powers our mission. Anne-Marie Waters, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Oh, what a lovely thing to do this. So tell me, why are you described as, and it's, really, okay, when I was looking into you, it was like, fuck, like everyone thinks you're like the most right-wing person ever in the world times 10.
I know.
Why is that?
I have no idea, except to say I think I'm consistent. This is the problem. And in politics, if you're consistent, you will make enemies. In politics, you have to pick a side. You're either on the right or you're on the left. And if you decide you're on the left, then you have to agree with the left on everything. If you decide you're on the right, you have to agree with the right on everything. I don't do either. I agree with the left on some things. I agree with the right on some things. So, ergo, I have enemies on both sides. I have been quite fruitful with my language over the years. I probably wouldn't do that. I probably wouldn't speak in many ways the same way now as I used to. I described Islam as evil, for example. I still believe that, but I probably wouldn't say it as much now in the way that I used to. I don't know. You'd have to ask people. I do, not to pity myself or be self-indulgent or anything, but I do think I was particularly hated, which is fine, but I do think I was particularly hated, and I can't really figure out why. I don't spend a great deal of time thinking about it, thankfully, but I can't really. I guess it's, I'm unapologetic. I don't try particularly to be accommodating, or at least I didn't. I've not done this for a long time. When I look back on a lot of it, I'm proud of the values that I held firm to, regardless of the abuse I got. But when I look back, I think, oh God, sometimes you didn't do yourself any favours, girl, did you? I honestly think it's because I agree with both sides and I disagree with both sides, and I have never been backwards about coming forwards, and a lot of people don't like that.
All of the things that you've said could also apply to, for example, Julie Bindel. Do you know her? I
do, and I have a couple of things I could say about Julie Bindel, but
so you're not always, because I thought maybe you'll be on the same page about a lot of things.
Well, when I joined UKIP, now I don't remember word for word, it was a long time ago, but I remember her going on Twitter and calling me something along the line. She may have called me racist, I'm not sure if she used that word, but it was certainly not flattering. And she was working with Peter Whittle at the time, who was also UKIP. And I remember thinking, hello?
I wonder what that's about.
I don't know.
Let's get you two together.
I don't know why she sort of dropped me like a hot rock.
But
that point,
you are an interesting one politically, because there's. I mean, have you campaigned LGBT? Am I right with that?
Yes, back in university, I was the president of the It was LGB back then.
I
was the president of the LGB Society at university. That's a long time ago, though. And like I say, we were LGB then. I'm not quite. I'm not delighted about the TQ+++ or whatever the hell it is now. Yeah. It's bizarre.
Yeah.
Bizarre. We are gay people. We are not a fetish. It is fundamental. It's not everything, but it's a fundamental part of who you are. It's not a fetish. It's not a costume. And we have brought all sorts of crazy behavior. People want to do what they want. People want to have fetishes, whatever. I don't care. It's none of my business. But I do object to public indecency, which is what I think pride parades are in many respects now. And I understand. And my worry is that, I'm just one of those boring gay people who gets on with my worry is that people will see this fetishization of gayness, for want of a better word, and think we're all like that. This is a problem. And there is a backlash coming, and quite deservedly, over the trans thing and the non-binary thing, and it's also absurd. And that backlash is going to hit boring gay people like me. And I'm not pleased about that.
Yeah, I can totally understand that. I mean, I believe it was a fight for equal rights, wasn't it?
Of course, and to not be seen as some sort of fetish. That was exactly what we were fighting for. We wanted people to understand we were just like you. The only difference was we fall in love with our own sex. That's the only distinction between me and you. We didn't want to be seen as some sort of fetish that should be kept behind closed doors. And that's exactly what this TQ+++ nonsense is turning us into. And I'm very displeased about it. I've not been to a pride parade in decades, and I wouldn't go near one. Absolutely wouldn't go near one. And most of the gay people I know feel the same way.
Most people on this podcast are gay. So unbelievable. Right. I'm not deliberately, and I'm not. I'm not. Don't think I am. Memories of school and everyone calling me gay or whatever. But it just seems to happen. I mention it every week. It's like, oh, another one. I think a lot of gay people are probably pissed off with a lot of the stuff you've just mentioned. I think they're tired of it. Yeah. Let me ask you, do you think, I guess you can't be both, so you can never really know. Do you think lesbians love women? Is it a similar feeling probably to how straight men love women?
I have no idea. I think we have, there's probably... When you're two women, you have that in common. There's no sexual politics. There's no sexual divide.
Yeah.
By which I mean sex divide rather than sexual. That's an interesting question. One I haven't really thought about. Possibly, probably similarities, but I do think that as gay women, we have the being female thing in common. That a man and a woman don't have.
Whereas I wonder, gay men are probably always like comparing, and whoever's got the sort of bigger, that might give them more status in the...
Right.
But I don't know. One of the funny things about you, people have, racist and all of that stuff, but you lived in Holland and Germany, I believe.
Yes, I did.
I keep finding as well that it tends to be people who have actually lived in other places and understand different cultures who are most outspoken about our own culture being destroyed. Do you find that?
Yes, I think experience. I know people, for example, who spent some time in the Middle East, who are the most outspoken critics of their culture and of Islam. Yeah. Obviously, I mean, Holland and Germany is not exactly the other side of the world. It's still European. But maybe getting around a bit, traveling generally increases your thinking and your opens up your mind a little bit to the world. But, speaking of Holland, even back then, I lived in Holland. I'm 47 now. I was 21, so 26 years ago. And even then, I was naive then. I didn't really notice. But you had Moroccan landlords. And 2 times, myself and my friend had to leave our flat in the middle of the night because the Moroccan landlord came in, one time in his boxer shorts. And so we didn't even realise then, I didn't realise then, that what I was seeing for the first time was Muslim sexual harassment of European women. That was the first time I'd seen it. I didn't call it that. I was still a lefty Labour type back then. But even then, looking back, the signs were all there that something was going very wrong. There was the idea that, I'm sure, of course, there are Dutch rapists and perverts and all the rest of it. But the idea of 2 times in the space of 2 years that a Dutch man would have done that was unthinkable.
Yeah, unlikely, isn't it? And
Very
then
unlikely.
Obviously people are starting to see that. It's interesting because 20 years ago, as you say, you were naive to it, and so many of us were. And you've got something called Sharia Watch.
Yes.
Or Sharia Watch. Tell me about that.
Gosh, I can't even remember where that came from.
Or Sharia law.
That is a long time ago. I was campaigning again. I entered this when I was a law student. I knew there was a woman in my class, and she was a hijab-wearing Muslim. We became quite good friends. But her brothers were... Her sister had escaped a forced marriage, and her brothers were hunting down her sister. And she told me quite matter-of-factly that if they catch her, they'll kill her. Oh. And this was my introduction. So I was still on the left then. So I thought, how do I campaign? I understood, I learned that it was Sharia law. And this is before I read the Quran or any of it. How do I campaign? How do I speak up against this while still staying on the left? And I got involved with Mariam Namazi. You may know her. She's a communist. I didn't know that at the time. And even if I did, I don't think I would have occurred to me what a communist was. No. Again, I was just getting on with my life. I was a member of the Labour Party, but I wasn't particularly political. It didn't take up my thinking too much. That became too left wing. I started to think about immigration and how it is just common sense. If you are going to bring millions of people who believe in Sharia law into your country, you are bringing Sharia law into your country. This is obvious. And as I grew up a little bit, that became more and more apparent to me. So I spoke. I said, look, the EDL was very active at the time and very prominent. And I remember saying, we need to talk to the EDL. We need, and that was it. That was it. Never spoke to me again. Again, calling me racist on social media, just like that. We had worked together, hand in glove. As soon as I said, we have to talk to the EDL, gone, done. I was in the board of the National Secular Society around the same time. Mm-hmm. I quit rather than have them force me to leave.
Which they would have done, wouldn't they? All of the secular society. I mean, I'm an atheist myself, and Dawkins got his award taken away, his humanist award, whatever humanism really means. They would have kicked you out. They're quite religious than non-religious.
They want to avoid the fate they dish out to others. I know there were people in the National Secular Society who privately agreed with me entirely about immigration, but they saw what happened to me when I said, we shouldn't be importing this stuff. This is outrageous. How can you call yourself a secularist and yet have no problem opening the border to hundreds of thousands, millions of people who believe in Sharia law? Yeah. How can you call yourself a secularist? I was completely in a moment. It's not they sit down and talk to you and say, look, no, done, you're gone, that's it. They didn't want that to happen to them, so they don't say it publicly. They say it privately. They don't say it publicly. And that's been across the board. I've known many people over the years who have said to me in private, I agree with you, but they don't want to happen to them. The same treatment they dish out to others, they don't want happening to them. And it's quite common for people to, look, I'm not going to let it happen to me what happened to her. I'm going to keep my mouth shut. Very common.
As a podcast host, my day is packed with chats, interviews, and meetings. At first, it was hard to keep track of it all. Then I discovered Claude Note, an AI taking tool that's like a business partner. It records and transcribes everything into clean, accurate text, so I never miss a detail. No typing, no distractions. Then the AI ChatGPT organizes the notes, highlights key points and action terms, and even gives you a smart summary. But it doesn't stop there. It can answer questions, extract insights, and help you find exactly what you need later. Think of it as your digital notebook. Everything archived, searchable, and ready when inspiration strikes. Best part? It's hands-free, doesn't drain your phone battery or take up storage. And it comes in a sleek, wearable design that clips right onto your phone. With Claude Note, you don't have to be organized and disciplined at all times. Just press the button, Note takes care of the rest. Check the link in the description and use the code below. Do you think if it had been that we were immigrating people from Clearwater, Florida, which is the headquarters of Scientology, that people would speak up and go, well, hang on a minute, we're bringing in, I think there's only 30,000 Scientologists in the world, but if we're bringing in hundreds of thousands, potentially millions of Scientologists, would they speak up?
If they're white, the secularists would, yeah.
Yeah.
There's not a doubt in my mind.
How has this happened that there's this conflation between immutable features, which I think a lot of us have agreed, let's not judge people because of their skin color and things like that, and what is very clearly a set of beliefs?
It's dishonest and it's disingenuous, and I think people know it is. But there are different aspects to it. Okay, it's not every individual. And this is something else that gets me into trouble. Every individual is a blank sheet. So when I meet a person, I treat them as a blank sheet. I show them respect, the respect they show me, regardless of background, colour, or anything else. However, at the same time, I do not wish to see Europe become minority white. Why should it?
That's an interesting philosophical one, isn't it?
Why should it? So if we keep the borders open to people from Africa, for instance, it will no longer be white majority. It will therefore no longer be the British or the Britain that has stood for centuries and centuries and centuries. Why should Europeans be the only racial group on this planet expected to be minorities in the white homeland, which is Europe?
Yeah, I think that's interesting. And we need to have that conversation, don't we?
Do.
Because I think it's pathetic when people are just like, what? I just, shut down, people be closing this video down because of that mention. And I think, well, hang on, never in history have the people who have shut down debate been the good guys. So let's have that conversation. Right. I don't have a very strong opinion either way about it, but I'll do the devil's advocate and say, why does it matter? I mean, eventually we're going to lose this anyway. And I say we, I don't even know if I am white. I'm from Jewish ancestry. It'll be Polish. I don't even know where they're all from. But I think of myself as sort of white. I don't know.
Well, your skin is white.
Yeah, okay.
There's that.
So why? Well, that's a good point. So are we talking about an aesthetic thing?
No, we're talking about culture. We're talking about a link to the land. Human beings are territorial. We have an emotional and romantic attachment to our homelands. I certainly do. We are allowed to have that. We are allowed to, say, for example, if the majority in Britain became non-British or non-white, how do we maintain our links with the past, which I think we should do? How do we maintain our links to our identity? Will we still have the Union Jack? Will we still? But let me give you a better example. Let's talk about America. I think America is a great example of this. If the majority, because it's on the verge of happening, if the majority of America becomes non-white, will non-white people agree to live under a constitution, which is America? No constitution, no America. It's a different place. The landmass will still be there, but the United States of America, as we have known it for 250 years, if it becomes non-white, will the non-white majority agree to live under the constitution which was drawn up by white Europeans, or will they have no connection to that whatsoever? I think they will have no connection to it whatsoever, and it will completely transform the landmass that is today the United States of America. It will not exist. So similarly here in Britain, if you have no link to, or Europe, if you have no link to Europe, historical link, family links to Europe, will you give a damn about Europe? Will it still be the same place? It won't be.
Well, it won't be the same place.
No.
And things will, in 1,000 years.
Things change, but do we need to rapidly change them for the worse, as we're doing now? Of course things change, and of course we have to progress and advance. I am, in many respects, a progressive. I'm very happy with the progress we've made since the 1950s, for example. I don't want to go backwards, but nor should we throw the baby out with the bathwater. There are some great things about this country which we should maintain, and the British people have a right to maintain their British identity. They have a right to the Union Jack. They have the right to the emotional attachment of the Britain, of themselves, of their parents, of their grandparents. They have that right, much like anyone has that right, much like people from Uganda have that right, or people from, name your country, have that right. It seems to me that the only people denied that right are Europeans, are white people. But everyone else is allowed to have a heritage, a history, an attachment to the land of their parents and grandparents. Everyone is allowed that except white people. That's wrong.
I wonder to what extent, though, some of what you've said is, and some of what you said is obviously correct and right, but then I wonder if some of it is also about beliefs. The reason maybe that people who are not white in America might not accept a constitution set up by European white people is because of what I would say would be, woke culture and things like that. This obsession with race. So I don't want to then on the other side also fixate on race. I'm wondering if the problem here is what you're seeing every day is people being overly proud of their own race and being encouraged to be so, except for white people.
Yes, that is true.
It's a recipe for disaster.
That is true.
So I would want to go, let's scrap the whole thing. Scrap the whole woke hierarchy of oppression, get rid of the whole thing. Let's just go, hey, there's loads of black people in America, there's loads of Latinos, there's whoever, but let's actually admire those white Europeans who set up this country you moved to and everyone's happy. And I think then if we could encourage that, people could, maybe it's idealistic, people could get on board with that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't disagree with you, but at the same time, I think I'd have to come back to it. I think white people are entitled and have a right to be a majority in Europe, and a real majority, not 51%.
But how do you even? I mean, there's going to be so much mixing. I think now. I think in 1,000 years, everyone's going to be sort of brown, aren't they?
Sure. I mean, we're not going to worry about it then, are we? But
no. And that's an interesting thing in itself, isn't it? To what extent do you... There's a mathematical equation, I can't remember what it is, about how much you worry about future, or you should worry about future generations. And it's like the 2 or 3 ahead of you, next generations, what you do. And with each generation passing, you're like, well, who the fuck are those guys in 10,000 years, Sure.
I mean, you can't control the future, obviously, but you can try not to let the next generation live in misery. You can try. I think there is a duty upon us.
I feel like just as, and I would agree with you, this is a huge problem that white people have been told that they're terrible. I mean, it is now an insult, you white so-and-so. And they're going to react, and it's going to be more and more tribal. Just as they've been told that, I suppose minorities as well, black people, Asians and so on, also shouldn't be told, oh, you guys are the bad guy, we need more white people, because they're going to then revolt. And I think if we could just cool it down on all sides and go, let's stop worrying about the skin color. It doesn't matter. And maybe there, you know what? Some white people, or many of us, might secretly go, God, I wish everyone did look a bit more like me. It was nice, but to what extent can you do that without becoming authoritarian?
I don't think you need to be authoritarian to control your borders, to make sure that your native people don't become a minority in their own country. I don't disagree with you on the woke thing and the ideally it wouldn't matter, but in reality it does.
I want to make it not matter. I get the argument as well. People often say...
Dealing with human nature, though.
Yes. No, I know. I get that.
And human nature is not always pleasant.
But we're also dealing with, even if you control the borders, there will be people from different colours and backgrounds and things. It is going to happen anyway.
Yeah.
So let's do the best we can to assimilate. But I respect the argument many have made to me about, well, look at Japan. If Japan was becoming minority of Japanese ethnicity... Absolutely.
It's a great example, Japan, actually.
They'd kick off, wouldn't they? And I think many of us would sympathise.
And they would be right to.
So why are we different? So, these are really complicated issues that we need to discuss more. And people... you just wanted to... You want to talk to the EDL. I mean, there were some bad factions in there, aren't there? Of course. What are they? Who are the bad factions in the EDL?
I didn't know the EDL very well, but I say of course because it's inevitable. When I founded For Britain, there were some bad factions in there too. I mean, we tried to keep some of the bad people out. People who are anti-Semitic, for example, people who are misogynistic, people who are anti-gay. Those were my 3.
Okay.
Misogyny, homophobia, anti-Semitism, you're out. I'm not tolerating any of the 3. But people do. They join. You can't keep a close eye on absolutely everyone. When you find them, you throw them out. So I'm assuming, I didn't know the EDL very well.
What if they were anti-black?
If they hate black people, then no. But if they want to have a sensible discussion about racial difficulties, then it depends on their approach. If they hate black people, this is not acceptable. But if we want to talk about racial differences and about racial issues in a sensible manner, then no.
Why did Jews like me get a free pass in that sense? Like anti-Semitism out? Because to my mind,
anti-Semites tend to be extremely nasty people in a variety of different ways.
Well, anti-black
it's a good
people
question,
do as well.
And it's a very good question, and one I haven't given any thought to. I don't think I really have an answer to that. It was just a red flag that always went up for me.
I wonder if, to some extent, Jews, firstly, are very good at assimilating and partly are able to because they pass.
Because they're white, and for the most part. That's a good point.
And also tend to be very tiny minorities in countries. So there's no real danger of them. I mean, there's like 0.5% in the UK.
Look, I don't, if we were to talk about Jews versus Muslims, for example, we have never as a country experienced widespread grotesque crimes committed by Jews.
You haven't met my family.
Jews don't impose things. That people talk to me when I want halal, I want unstunned slaughter banned completely
So do I.
out.
And
people
that's
will
kosher
say, and
as well.
I always focus on halal because that's the vast majority of unstunned slaughter. People say to me, but what about kosher? So I want kosher banned as well, but the difference is kosher is not being imposed upon us. Jews do not impose their culture on the rest of us. For the extent that Jewish culture differs from widespread culture, which it doesn't really, apart from, old traditional things that, but kosher is not imposed on us. This is really, really important. I do want it stopped for the sake of animals. I'm
You're
a vegan.
Yeah.
I am, yes.
I'm a vegan as well.
Are you?
Yeah.
Are you? Oh,
Big
so
right-wing
nice.
vegans, although they'll say Hitler was one as well, won't they? If that was true.
I'm sure the left have thrown that one at me a few times.
Yeah. It's funny, I was at a vegan festival called Vegan Camp Out, and it was great because all the food trucks were, so it was, I like fast food, horrible, shitty food, and I was just like, no, getting it everywhere. And they had to vote like who they would like to see speak most next year. And the overwhelming, it was like 90% voted for Ricky Gervais, who is an enemy of the woke. And it was really interesting to see that the people at Vegan Festival, so I think veganism has actually moved very much, I mean, there still are woke lunatics in that,
Of
but
course.
loads of us who are not part of that are just like, I just don't really want to eat animal stuff.
No, same. Same. That's all. That's pretty much all there is to it. I don't subscribe to a blue-haired radical lifestyle. I just choose not to. I'm not really fanatical about it either. If I accidentally drank a cup of coffee with cow's milk, and I wouldn't go, oh my God, it's. But I choose not to spend my money on industries that harm animals.
Yeah.
That's it. I'm not even against meat per se. It's just the way it's done. Is horrific. There's no need whatsoever to treat animals like this. None. It is outrageous and disgusting. And I refuse to put the money I have into that industry.
I think most meat eaters, including those watching now, probably agree.
Yeah.
And they just say, look, it's a human thing I'm doing. And they have their arguments. I think they're very good arguments.
Yeah,
but they'd agree the way it's done.
Yeah.
And I think you start by saying, okay, halal, kosher. And I've been shouted at by my own community, whatever that means, for saying about kosher. But you can't have a go at halal and not kosher, especially because halal, it's only something like, it's like 89%. It's only like 11% to an unstunned.
No.
That's what I was told.
No. It's not true. Even the RSPCA thinks this. It's just not true. When we talk about stunning and halal, they just mean electrocution. The animal is still conscious. And if you go to all the halal certification boards, they admit it. This is one of the things that always happens with Islam. We want our society, the media, the politicians, even the charities, want so badly to think well of Islam that they'll believe anything they're told about it. It's not true. The animal must be alive to hear the Islamic prayer. This is the whole point of it. So when they say stunning, they simply mean electrocution. The animal is still conscious when it dies.
Why is they electrocute them?
It's a lie.
Why electrocute them?
All it does is torment them even further. It's not true. Guarantee you, go on to the websites of the big halal certification boards in this country. It's written there. They fully admit it. But even the RSPCA, which I have supported and still donate to every month since I was a teenager, even they believe this 88% thing. It's not true.
Those
the animal
charities,
is not unconscious.
Although, I'm not suggesting people shouldn't support them, but they get these things wrong all the time. Because that's probably where I got that figure from.
Absolutely. Probably. It's one thrown around all the time, but it's just not true. The animal is...
even if it were true, halal is so much larger and vaster. There's so many more Muslims in this country than Jews that even that 11% is significantly higher than the 100% of kosher where that's done.
Yeah.
But both, I think, should be banned.
I agree.
Loads of people get in touch with me, Jewish people, friends of mine, saying, no, it's not true. It's done very humanely. It's not. I'm not having it. And I've looked into that. It's not.
I've heard
Stop
that
it.
too. I've had people tell me who've witnessed, one person, well, not people, but one person who witnessed kosher slaughter said it is actually very respectful and humane to the animal. I think, I'm not going to watch that, but I'm going to take a bit of persuading before I believe that. Cutting your throat while you're fully conscious is not humane under any circumstances whatsoever. None of it's humane. Factory farming in general is not humane. It's disgraceful. It's disgusting and vile, and I refuse to participate in it. But for crying out loud, the least we can do is knock them out before we cut their throats and hang them upside down. That's the least we can do.
Yeah. I hope people didn't just click when you said that and they think you might be talking about people or something. The least we could do, hang them upside down. We're talking about farming, everybody, because these things do get cut, don't they?
Well,
someone will cut together.
The thing about black people is already going to be used. But look, I actually want to clarify that point as we're on it.
Please do.
There are issues that need to be discussed, like the growing, in my view, anti-white hatred among black people. We need to talk about that. We need to talk about crime figures, about gang culture in London. We need to talk about all of that, and we have to not be ashamed or embarrassed to acknowledge racial statistics in crime. I will not apologise for saying that.
They're very complicated, though, because they mix up with poverty and with being a new immigrant or those kinds of things. They're so complicated. And as to, I agree, you cannot have a country where some groups of people are allowed to be very proud of their ethnicity and race, and they're encouraged to do so by our television channels.
Yes.
They are made to go, this is our awareness for our ethnicity, and the idea is because we are some sort of minority, and then tell the white population, or in Japan, the Japanese population, that they can't be proud because that's a recipe for disaster. So I 100% agree with you on that. My answer is always, everybody, stop it. Stop it. I had this debate with David Baddiel when he came on, and he was saying about, he wrote that book, Jews Don't Count, and it was about the hierarchy of oppression in the woke culture and why aren't the Jews in there? And I said, no, don't get rid of the oppression thing, and all of us can start looking at each other, like Martin Luther King Jr. said. I don't know who Senior was, probably his dad, right?
I'm assuming so. I'm no expert.
Like him and maybe his dad said, people... Like you said at the beginning, blank slate. Sure,
but demographic and blank slate between two individuals are different.
Yeah.
Demography is not the same as two individuals meeting and treating each other with respect. We have to deal with... I think this is actually... Let me phrase it this way. Demographics are a real thing, and we cannot shy away from talking about them.
Yes, but they do combine with lots of things. I mean, because otherwise you would have to say, and I don't know enough about all of this, but you would have to say there is something about it. Let's say crime statistics are higher among black communities in the UK than the white. Well, unless we're going to say, yes, but that's because of other things. If we're going to say it's because of, then what are we saying? Is it something about the pigmentation? Is it something about the skin color? What is it? I
have no idea, but we ought to talk about it and maybe find out.
That's why I would say this is culture.
We don't talk about it at all.
It's culture.
Culture, yes. But is that culture... How does that culture negatively impact on the white majority? And are we going to just look aside and continue to let it negatively impact the white majority? Africa and Europe are very different places. And why don't we talk about why? I have no idea why. I'm not pretending to know why. But why don't we talk about it? And why don't we talk about, let's ask the question, if Britain were to become black majority, for instance, not to pick on black people, but what would it look like?
Black.
But what else would it look like?
I think it depends on how that were to happen. If that was to start to happen, I think it would be a question of, as I keep maybe naively saying, culture, right? Frank Bruno, Ian Wright.
These are individuals, though. There is. Again, it's the difference between demographic and individual. I understand that demographics are made up of individuals, but large numbers of individuals is different from dealing one individual to another. There are issues here, and they need to be talked about. I have no idea why Europe is the way it is versus Africa is the way it is, for instance, but it is very different, and we should ask why before we open our borders to people from such a different place. Why shouldn't we be asking what impact will this have on us? Why is Africa so poor versus Europe, which is so well off? Why? There's got to be a reason for that.
Developed at different times, different land, different problems with the climate.
And the people who come from there are of that land or of that culture.
But they're blank slates.
You can't just expect... No. You can't just expect to move millions of people from a culture... Like, I understand that Africa is a big continent with many countries in it, but if we look at it from a demographic from miles up there, you can't expect to bring millions of people from a continent like Africa, throw them into a continent like Europe, and expect everyone to just... It's fine. This is fine.
How do you
it's
feel
not
about,
fine. We're very different.
How do you feel about like a black guy's been adopted as a baby and raised by a white family here?
Of course, look, again, you're talking about an individual. I'm talking about demographics. It's the same with Asia, by the way. You can't pick millions of people out of Pakistan, throw them into the UK and expect there to be no division, no problem, no clash. We are different. We are all humans. We all have a common humanity. But one of the characteristics of humanity is difference. We are not all the very same. We are not. If we were, the world would look the same. From Australia to Canada and everywhere in between would look exactly the same if we were the same. We're not.
But do you mean immutably, or do you mean?
I don't know where it comes from. I don't know if we evolve, don't we? We've evolved differently. I'm not even necessarily saying it's biology. I have no idea. I just know that we are different.
See, my feeling is, from the little I know, that there are differences, immutable differences. There are genetic differences, there are IQ differences, but they're very, very...
I didn't say that, you did.
Yeah. I'm going to be more controversial.
You're even naughtier than me. It's true.
Yeah.
I was holding back a little bit, but that's true.
There are these things.
So you're even naughtier than me.
Yeah. Well, no, I've done an episode on that.
Yeah.
And the reason I keep pushing it is because Ashkenazi Jews are shown time and time again to be the highest on the IQ test. Some people would say they debunk this. Some people don't. It's very, very, it's as controversial as it can get, isn't it? That's why you didn't even want to say it.
Right.
It is.
It's true. I left it out. We're different. But you added in the bits I left out. I'm glad you did. But it's true.
But however, I would say there are then pockets in different parts of, it's so difficult to measure this up and to weigh it up. It's really hard. And I just think, okay, all of those things are tiny differences. And without saying diversity is our strength, there can be some use from having people from different parts of whatever,
Of course, but they should adapt. And
yes, well, this is where we agree.
And that will only happen in small numbers. That way you must keep minorities, in European countries, non-Europeans should be a small minority. Therefore, you can learn from each other, but the people who come into Europe from outside must accept a European majority, supermajority, not 51%, and must adapt to that culture. Must not insult the native people of that country or their culture, or attack it, or commit crimes, grotesque crimes against them, or bring their cultural crimes. They may not be crimes in your source country, but they're crimes here. So you don't get to do it. If you want to do it, go back to your own country. For example, FGM, which is one of the most grotesque things imaginable. You don't get to do that here. You can do that in Somalia. I wish you wouldn't do it in Somalia, but I can't police the world. You don't get to do that here. If you want to come here and cut up your daughter's genitals, get the hell out. We are not accepting this. And it's not just that. Halal is another example. Forced marriage, child marriage, Sharia courts, out. Yeah. No, you don't get to come to Britain and bring that with you. No.
This is why I mentioned that you'd lived abroad, because it's that feeling of you go to somebody's country, you learn to respect it. And when I was in Argentina, I told you off air before that on Falklands Day, which they would call Malvinas or Dia de las Malvinas or something like that, I accidentally wore a full England kit and was walking around before I realised it was Falklands Day, and then I had to take my shirt off and run home before anybody noticed. But really, partly out of fear for my life, but also of offending the local people. This is their country. I would do things the way they do it. And it's very frustrating for a lot of people who have lived abroad, and I'm sure many viewers have had this experience, or just holidays, just being abroad and respecting the local people. And they do their bit to do that, and then coming back to the UK and finding people won't do that for our culture.
Right.
And not only that, they're encouraged not to buy our TV channels.
Right, and our government.
Yeah, who take the piss.
And our government.
Frankly. What are some of the, I was told my whole life, don't worry about Islam, for example, it's only a tiny, tiny percentage of people who are extreme. What are some of the things that suggest that's not the case? Well,
the religion itself is extreme. I would wager that a lot of people who think there's no reason to worry about Islam have never read the Quran. I have. I know what it says. I know what it teaches about us, the non-Muslim. I know what it teaches. But look, the higher your Muslim population, the more power the leaders have. So if you have what I call an Islamist, which is someone who wants to live under Sharia law, the Islamists gain their power from the size of the demographic they feign to represent. And the government treats them as if they represent. So things like the Muslim Council of Britain, Muslim Association of Britain, all these Islamist-led organisations would have immense power in this country. And they have that immense power because the government treats them as if they represent every Muslim. Of course they don't, but the more Muslims there are in the society, the larger the demographic, the more power they have. And I can tell you, if we had teetering towards, say, 30%, the demands for Sharia law would be enormous. They're already enormous. The higher, the bigger the demographic, the more weight that demand has. And any Muslim within that community who is just a normal person getting on with it, they will go along with it. They will go along with those demands because of community ties, religious ties, even though I probably know more about the Quran than a lot of Muslims do. But they will side with their own community. And then the Sharia law becomes wider, more widespread. The demands get bigger and bigger and more dangerous to us. And the bigger the demographic, the more weight those demands have. And Muslims will, not every individual, we're talking demographics again, Muslims will go along with the demands of, and the cultural, they will accept to conform to an increasingly Islamic culture on this island. I object.
Do you think then there's sort of the average Muslim, from what you're saying, and I think that sounds about right to me, the average Muslim probably doesn't want the Sharia law. They're not looking for it. They don't want that kind of, but maybe when it does start to happen, might not kick up such a fuss.
Well, first of all, they'll be afraid to.
Yeah.
And
which is
secondly,
terrible.
Community and family ties. And remember how divided we are. So we are living in a fractured country. So people are getting further and further away from each other. And as you get further and further away from each other, the more into your own community you become. You find defence, you find safety in your own community. The more divided we become, the more, the closer the different communities are going to become. There's absolutely no way that if Sharia law became even more powerful on this island, that Muslims are going to object to any effective extent. Absolutely no way.
I keep looking up to see, like ChatGPT, to see if there are Muslim majority countries that don't have at least some of these laws, or where it's okay to be gay.
No.
There's just nothing.
There's none. Absolutely none.
I think you can, like Tunisia, you can sort of get away with it. It's not culturally accepted though.
Well, I mean, it's not just being gay, it's women. I'm a woman.
I'm sorry to hear that.
Thank you. I'm very proud of it. Very pleased about it, actually.
Yeah.
I will not accept anything that treats me as some sort of second-class subhuman under any circumstances. And if it was imposed on me, then I would rather not be here. But I can tell you what, I'm not going out quietly if that ever happened.
Would you fight?
Of course.
You've got a strong handshake.
Oh, God, yes.
Your handshake was very strong.
Thank you.
It shocked me.
Why? Because I'm small?
Yeah.
Right.
And a woman, women don't tend to have strong handshakes.
I've had to toughen up quite a bit over the years.
Have you been in fights?
Never a physical fight, no. No. It's not really my style. If anything starts to flare up like that, I'm out of there. I'm out of there full stop. I'm not putting myself in danger. For what? If it would change anything, I'd be willing to put my life on the line. What? I'm not ruining my life for nothing. It wouldn't have any impact. So no, I'm look after myself too.
But you said as well that if things got to a point where women were second-class citizens,
yes.
you would have to fight.
Yes, oh, absolutely. I would physically fight at that point, yeah. And that's not just coming, I want to make this clear, that's not just coming from Islam or immigration. I can see the right wing. I'm not blind. I can see the right wing. I can see the blaming women for this. I can see it. So, this is coming up on both sides. A bit like Jews, actually. Women get it from both sides. They get it from the left and they get it from the right. And when there's anything wrong in society, there seems to be a standard, blame the Jews or blame women. No. And if it comes to it, yes. And I don't care whether it's the left or the right. In fact, I would be more likely to end up, say if they came for women's vote, I'd be more likely to end up fighting the right than the left on that one. And I'm willing to fight whoever. Yeah,
eventually. I mean, the Islamism is on the right, isn't it, really?
Oh, of course, but it is being facilitated by the left. because of race. This is why race matters.
There's the argument, isn't there, that, I mean, it's so hard, life. It's hard. If you just go out for dinner with a friend, it's hard enough to decide where you want to eat, And if there's 3 or 4 of you, it's even harder. So if you have 70 million people, how can you make everyone happy? And it feels a little bit like, okay, you put a bit of this, ingredient in and another ingredient, and it's gone too far. And we've just, and some people have said that some aspects of feminism have opened the doors for this kind of thing, especially in terms of the UK being undefendable now. Men are constantly told, it's sort of a feminized way of looking at men, as though we are the same men and women, and we might be we are biologically different. Men, I keep seeing on the TV sort of these men sat there looking very glum, while a woman presenter says to them, like, "Why haven't you cried? When did you last cry?" And I keep thinking, like, well, what if a man doesn't want to cry?
When was that? Where did you see that?
That's always on, like, after adolescence. That documentary. They kept calling it a documentary. Sorry,
I watched it and I thought, what the hell is this about? It was awful.
It was all right.
I thought it was dreadful.
First episode was good.
I've never seen that. That's silly.
Yeah, it's a lot. All the morning programs.
Leave men alone.
Leave men alone.
Leave women alone as well. Just let us be.
How do you feel about deportation?
It needs to happen.
And to what extent?
I would immediately, if I was Prime Minister tomorrow morning, I would detain and deport everyone who has come in here on a boat. That's the truth. You cannot allow that to just be. I went down to Dover to see, and I didn't expect to see it. I saw 2 separate boats. I genuinely didn't expect to see anything. I saw 2 separate boats just land on the beach, ironically, from the Battle of Britain Museum. Isn't that insane?
Just while you were there?
While I was at 2 separate occasions. And we were only there for a day. We were at the Battle of, I don't know if you've been to the Battle of Britain Museum. There's a beautiful cliff overlooking a beach. And on that beach, we're looking down at 2 separate times, and they just got off the boat, left it there and walked. And I'm thinking, you are kidding me. This is outrageous. No country can allow that to stand. Everyone who came in on the boat, and you're not going to find everyone, of course you're not, but it has to go, it has to be deported. I would deport all known jihadis. We have about 40,000 jihadists on being watched by the security services.
Yeah.
Why are they still here? It's an outrage. Anyone who's not a British citizen should have been gone a long time ago. It's outrageous. British citizens, things become more complicated. I think we should find a crime, and for the most part, they will have committed a crime. But all known jihadists who are not British citizens should be gone. Anyone reasonably suspected, this is where I get controversial, anyone reasonably suspected of involvement in grooming gangs should be deported, who are not British citizens, 100%. And I say reasonably suspected because convictions are very difficult to come by. But we do not have to put British girls at risk because this person, we haven't got enough evidence to convict him, but it's obvious. I'm sorry, no. I'm not putting British girls at risk. He's not a British citizen. If he's a British citizen, again, things are different. But if he's not a British citizen, why are we risking young British girls in order to let him live in a first world country? No. Out.
Bloody hell.
Yes. Now you're getting it. Now you're getting why people hate me so much.
Okay, so most of the things you've said, I think most people agree with the ideology of it. We don't want some guy who has probably done a grooming gang thing in our country. We don't want people arriving on boats, and they shouldn't be able to stay here if so.
Absolutely not.
The problem is, and I know you know this, firstly enacting this without, again, becoming a little bit authoritarian. That means not having sufficient proof. The British democracy is based on having proof.
Fine, but these are not British citizens.
Well,
I'm talking about non-British citizens. I said it gets more complicated when you are. You know what? We need to talk about full stop. We need to talk about and why the conviction rate is so low. That needs tackling as a separate but related issue.
Well, you've got this Blackwell's ratio, isn't it? That's the 10. What is it? For every one person who's wrongly imprisoned,
right?
There have to be 10 who
and our legal system is based on the idea that it is better for 10 guilty men to go free than for one innocent person to be jailed. I don't necessarily have an issue with this, but
and Benjamin Franklin made it 100 to 1.
For conviction rates to be this low, I think should be dealt with separately than the normal criminal justice system. Anyway.
But there are false accusations. They do happen.
Yeah.
And then what do you do? That could be your son.
And then the vast majority, look,
your brother,
the vast majority of women who are raped never get justice. So why don't we care about that? You instantly went to, what about someone who's wrongly convicted? I'm not saying that's not a problem. What about all the women who never get justice? Which is a huge number. Every woman I know, which is quite a few, who have been raped. I have never been raped, by the way. People think I have because I feel so strongly about rape. I have not. But I know several women who have been. Not one of them has got any justice. Not one. I know several people who've been sexually abused as children. Again, I wasn't. Not one of them has had any justice. So why does our first port of call is always, I'm not saying it's not important, but our first discussion is always about what about false accusations? What about the justice for women?
I think...
Why don't we don't talk about it?
I don't mean to say you're wrong. It's really difficult, isn't it? I mean, I know you know this is complicated as well. If you could change that, you can go, instead of giving them justice, we're going to make it so it didn't happen or something. We're going to make it so... because justice is really important to those women. I think what's being weighed up is their level of justice when their lives have already been ruined by what happened to them anyway. But
do you know how much better, how much faster recovery from that kind of trauma is when you get justice?
I don't know.
Do you know that the not getting justice just compounds the trauma over and over again? And let me give you a little example. I used to work in the courts. I used to be a clerk. Actually, I was a clerk at the Old Bailey. We've got a different lifetime. There was an African woman, and she was from Africa, and I don't know what country. Her husband, I was in the court when this happened. Her husband was sent to jail right there and then. He was sent down to the cells from this courtroom for beating her up. I remember, this shaped so much of me, and someone I'm very, very close to is another person who has endured a terrible sexual assault and never got any justice. But I remember seeing that woman. She grew a foot taller. Because the court had punished someone for harming her. It matters. It matters. When your society tells you that you don't matter, something terrible has been done to you, and we don't care. The society, the justice system doesn't really care. You go from this size to this size. But if they do care and you get justice, you go from that size to that size. It matters. It really matters.
That's interesting.
And it's interesting to me that when we discuss rape and the lack of conviction, the first port of call is never, justice for women. It's never the first thing we talk about, and we should talk about it.
Everything you say, I mean, that's very compelling, and there's a lot I didn't realise about how important justice is. And I mean, obviously, I know I'm not an idiot. I know it's important, but I didn't. I didn't understand to that extent. But I think if we went down your route, let's say you're Prime Minister now, you would be accepting a large number of men in prison for things they didn't do.
I'm not saying we should jail every man who's accused. You're misunderstanding me. But we need to deal with it differently.
Okay.
I want an inquiry into why the conviction rate is so low, how the police behave. When a woman reports, the police go through her phone. She becomes the suspect. He has all the rights which should be afforded. Understand, I don't want some authoritarian nightmare, but there's something wrong here. When the conviction rate is 1%, there's something wrong. And if we gave a damn about women and their safety and justice for women, we wouldn't just tolerate that 1% and say, oh, well,
I guess
something has to happen here, because otherwise we're assuming that 99% of women are lying, and that is bullshit.
Well, it's not an assumption that 99% are lying. It's that the vast majority of them are telling the truth. The vast majority.
Right. So why aren't the rapists going to prison then? That's the point. If we accept that the vast majority are telling the truth, then why is the conviction rate 1%? And why aren't we looking at why the conviction rate is 1%?
Because we don't know which of the vast majority. Because we don't know which ones.
But the system is broken, if that's the case. There's something wrong.
I think, yeah.
There's something wrong.
I'm trying to think where we disagree, because we agree on so much, I think, in terms of ideology, and then we differ on how to implement. And I think, for me, I'm feeling like, and tell me if you agree with this, for me, I'm saying look, I agree, but unfortunately, if we were to do that, go into homes and take people out and take them out.
At what point did I suggest we go into homes?
How else do you deport
I am asking
people?
the people in the hotels should all be deported.
Yeah.
And yes,
but
we do
if
have
they've
to
been
go.
here for some time.
We do have to. I don't. That's not. You cannot allow that to stand.
It might be that I'm
to
refusing to accept ugly realities.
I think
it might be that
a little bit,
or it might be that you underestimate how impossible it would be to apply some of these things without verging into authoritarianism.
No. I don't think it's impossible to imply them at all. It's impossible to fix it. It's impossible to get it perfect. You're always going to have people who get away, if you like. And I accept the same thing about. What I'm saying is, we as a society, as a country, cannot accept that people can come in here on boats and just stay. It's outrageous.
I agree with that.
Nor can we accept that conviction rate for rape is 1% and just accept it and shrug our shoulders and say the hell with it. Something has to be done. Something has to change. And we're not even asking the question about, with regard to rape, we're not even asking the question. We're not even saying this is outrageous, let's do something about it. The government should be looking at why that is 1%. And if needs be, treat rape separately from other crimes. I don't have a list here of how we do that. I'm saying let's sit down and talk about and devise a way that this cannot stand. It's outrageous. The same thing with people coming in on boats. I'm not suggesting everyone is going to be found or deported. I'm saying we as a country cannot accept this. It's bigger picture.
What about their
suppose.
kids like 20 years later?
What,
do they have to be deported if they get found 20 years later, and then their children taken out who've only known England? Where do they go? Those are the complicated realities. I agree with you on when they.
I'm talking about people. If tomorrow morning we know our hundreds of hotels have illegal immigrants in it who came in here on a boat. Shut those hotels and deport them. There's your first. And then what happens is that people stop coming. Then we start, after that, the first thing I would do, then after that, we start looking at jihadis and non-British citizens, deport them.
I agree with both of those.
We have no duty or responsibility to keep within our country people who threaten us. None. We've got to get tough. There's a line between authoritarian and tough. I agree with you. For instance, I think Donald Trump is behaving appallingly. He is being an authoritarian. You don't have to be. Look what he's done in Los Angeles. It's outrageous. He's taking people out of nail bars and restaurants, and this is outrageous. First of all, there are ways of doing things. And what he has done, I don't like Donald Trump anyway, but the way he's behaving, all he's doing is creating a massive rush to the left.
Yeah.
And causing way more harm than he's solving. He's an impulsive egotist anyway. But he is causing way more. There are ways of doing things. But just because you have to get tough does not mean you have to become an authoritarian.
I think with authoritarian, I don't necessarily mean tough by authoritarian. I mean acting without having a very, very convincing set of evidence. That's what I mean, in any respect.
The evidence in terms of the people in hotels, the evidence is that they're in hotels and they came out. We know. People, they all need to go.
Yeah. I went down to see in Tintagel where they were going to be put in Camelot Castle, and the owner, John Mappin, said no. I went a couple of weeks ago, and it was just nuts. You look, the Cornish people down there, you're going to suddenly put it's insane. So
so you're agreeing with me?
Oh, I do agree. I do agree.
You cannot just pick up people from a completely different part of the world and chuck them into the middle of a Cornwall village. Come on.
Of course. Of course I agree about that. And I couldn't just go to another country I want to go to where I'm not legally allowed in there either. I'll get chucked out, obviously, and I would accept that. So I agree with that. It's just instances where we don't, or where it gets complicated. Someone's been here 20, 30 years now. Their kids only know this. And I'm sure you agree, those are the complicated situations.
They are complicated situations. These are not, people who are quietly living are not a priority. I don't think we should hound decent people. I don't think we should be going into restaurants and taking out decent, quiet people who are getting on with their lives. This is the last thing I would do. But the first thing I would do is throw out everyone who came in on a boat. The second thing I would do, if they are being watched by MI5, or is it MI5 or MI6? That's the internal, whichever one it is.
The internal one's MI5.
If they are being watched, then there's a reason. they're being watched.
Well, that's scary. Hang on. That in
throw
itself,
them out.
Every authoritarian regime has said that. If you're being watched, there's a reason. You know that.
Come on. Look, why? Okay, so we either hurt a few people or completely destroy Britain.
This is what I mean. That's where we're rubbing up against each other.
I'm willing to hurt a few people. I'm sorry, I am, but I'm not willing to destroy. You see, Britain deserves to stand. It deserves to stand as a nation. It deserves to maintain its identity and culture.
But a fundamental aspect of that culture is not locking up people if we don't know the full facts. I'm not locking them
up and throwing them out.
Well, with the sexual assaults we are. We're locking them up and we don't know the details.
Again, I simply said, I never said we should lock up people on the allegation. I never said that. Sorry. I said we need to figure out why the conviction rate for rape is so low. And if necessary, treat rape differently from other criminal offences, have a separate system for sexual abuse and rape. I'm talking about sexual abuse of children as well. Sexual crimes are largely unpunished.
Well, and the sentences are so low.
And the sentences are so low. It's outrageous.
It's unbelievable.
So I never ever said that anyone should be jailed. I'm saying the system where sexual abuse and rape is involved is broken. It needs to be fixed. And we need to first sit down as a society and figure out what the hell is going wrong, that only 1% of rapists are convicted and then they are given minuscule prison sentences. That needs a question and an answer and a debate. That cannot continue. We cannot shrug our shoulders. I did not say we should be locking up people on allegations. I did say we should be throwing out people who shouldn't be here or who threaten us. Absolutely. And I make no apology for it. There's no reason for us. We have a choice. We can either accept a threat to our culture and to our safety. And the exchange is this person wants to live in a first world country. Therefore, we are going to risk our safety. So that person, no. Yeah. You threaten our safety, you threaten our culture. You don't get to live here.
Yeah, I fundamentally agree on most of it. I just think it's very hard to implement. And I'm very concerned about that kind of, they will have done. That's what they used to say in the Argentinian military junta. They used to say.
Are you comparing though? Look at the British state.
Well,
look
right
how
now.
Weak it is.
Right now.
Well, okay then, I have seen rallies over the years where people are out holding up signs saying, butcher those who insult Islam. You don't get to hold up a sign like that in this country. Get out. And I would throw them out.
Yeah, maybe I would as well. Well, fair enough. Anne-Marie, where can people find your socials and things?
I'm back on Twitter. I'm still censored. I don't care what anyone tells me. I'm still censored on Twitter. I'm AMD Waters, but one thing I am going to do now is Substack. I've started a Substack where I am documenting currently the migrant crimes against women, particularly. Not that I don't care about migrant crimes against men, but I particularly, this is about crimes against women. I've done France, Italy, Germany, and the Netherlands. I will continue to do that on Substack. But I'm starting a new podcast, and I'm being dragged back, kicking and screaming into this world. I really am.
Good.
I'm unable to keep my mouth shut. It seems I'm unable.
I know you started by saying I'm not going to talk about anything.
No, I don't. I'm a fairly quiet individual. I like my animals. I like my peace. But I just don't hear what I want to hear from other people. So I sort of think, well, if they're not going to, you have to say it then. If no one else is going to say it. It's sort of, I'm one of those people who say, well, I'm happy to sit here. There's a problem over there. I'll sort of wait a minute and see, is anyone going to solve that problem? No, God, I better.
Yeah.
That's how I'm being dragged back in this game. Point being, I'm starting a podcast on Substack very, very soon in August, or July or August. And I would really appreciate people. But I've lost a lot of followers for speaking out against Donald Trump. So which taught me something very, very fundamental. Is that right and left are essentially the same. You criticize, if you criticize someone on the right, they will cut you off. There's no debate, there's no discussion. Same as on the left.
How are you with people who disagree?
All I do is stay true to myself, to coin a cheesy phrase, but it's true.
How are you with people who disagree?
I want to talk about it. I want to talk about it. I made a series of videos in the run-up to the US presidential election last year, criticizing Donald Trump. And I gave receipts, as they say, for absolutely everything. Why I was criticising him, why he was a danger to the US Constitution, why he's a danger to democracy, why he's an authoritarian, he has an egotistical authoritarian leanings, all of it. And it was the same. The response I got was the same as I used to get from the left. Let's talk. Yeah. Let's talk. Here's an idea, let's have a democracy. By which I do not mean politics. Politics is not about debate and discussion. It's about destroying each other.
Yes.
I want a debate based on facts and truth. Let's talk.
You've had one today.
Talk. Yes, I have. Thank you. It's very refreshing.
It's good, isn't it? I think
let's have a democracy.
You know what? This
debate.
podcast is doing well, and I think because people do like that. You do get the vocal minority, and you're right, they're on the far right and the far left, who are just unsubscribing. You said a thing about Trump or something. Right. I couldn't care less what you think about Trump. I don't even know what I think, but maybe I have the opposite opinion. Who cares? Let's have a conversation. And they call it the woke right or the woke left, and both, whatever it is purity spirals.
Absolutely.
Where you have to hold all the opinions.
Absolutely.
Of all and that's nonsense. We should all have individual. We should encourage people, I think, to have more individual opinions and see if that makes for a healthier society.
It would do.
Who's a heretic you admire?
Oh gosh, well, he's gone. My favourite of them all, Christopher Hitchens. Loved him. I admire Ayaan Hirsi Ali, who isn't gone.
She's been on this.
Has she?
Mm-hmm.
She is. Is she
on that picture? No, she's going to over there somewhere.
She's a hero of mine.
I think I'm seeing her tomorrow.
I used to like Richard Dawkins. I probably still do. I was under the impression he'd gone off a bit to the left. Perhaps I'm wrong about that.
He's very anti-Trump.
Is he?
Yes.
Interesting.
Very anti-Trump, very anti-Islam, and very anti-trans.
Oh right, okay. Well, maybe I need to give him another look then. I genuinely don't pay a great deal of attention.
Dawkins, sorry.
Right.
I'm just thinking you would get on.
That's me. I'm there. Secularism, animal rights.
Dawkins.
Right, I'm there.
There you go. Did you read the Hitchens article about women not being funny?
No.
Then don't, maybe.
No. I'm not. Listen, I don't. Of course, women are funny. That's absurd.
He was tongue in cheek.
I don't have this. I'm not. I reclaim the word feminist from the permanently offended brigade. I don't care. I make a joke. I really don't care. I want women to have their own spaces, and I also want the same for men. I think we are. And fundamentally, we're the same, we men and women. But also there are remarkable differences and significant differences between us. And men have every bit as much right to be men as women do to be women. I'm not asking for us to be identical. I'm not asking for men to to behave in a way that some radical feminist wants him to behave however he likes. He's a human being. I'm not asking for any of that. What I want is rights. If we have the same rights, I'm happy. I don't care about anything else. I just want women to have the same rights as men, the same fundamental rights. That's it. After that, be as different as you like, make as many jokes as you like, couldn't care less. The same rights. That's it. That's all I want.
That sounds fair enough to me. People go and follow Anne-Marie. We'll put the some links down below to the various things she's including the new Substack and things like that. She's been fascinating and interesting. What do you think? Let me know in a comment down below. Can we agree and disagree about things? Is that allowed anymore? Hit the like button and keep watching this channel.